Hello loves, welcome to today's video. This video is going to be a little bit different than all of the videos that I've done before, because I wanted to do a little bit of a breakdown kind of video, astrologically speaking. Recently, in my most recent podcast that I did, we talked about cancel culture, my feelings on it, why I don't think it works, how I see that it does work, where the issues arise, society, shame, all of that stuff. If you would like to definitely listen to it, you can go ahead and look up Between Ascension, that's the name of the podcast, on any podcast platform, and you can find it there, so you can listen to my thoughts outside of this video. But I wanted to do this video specifically because I think that for 2021, I'm going to challenge myself and do a little bit of a shadow astrology reading on some people who have gotten canceled in the past and how that energy is shown in their birth chart and why it has kind of manifested and caught up in the way that it did, the relation to the public, all of these kind of things. So I kind of wanted to look at different figures, different ways that they have gotten canceled, and how much of it was done, all of these kind of things in a very, educational way. Shadow astrology readings are something that I offer on my website as well, and they're mainly focused on looking at where there are opportunities, issues, a little bit of pitfalls in your chart where you might need, to have a little bit more of a focus on and attention on as you're going about, life. So that way you don't kind of fall into the traps of those pitfalls. Because the thing about, for me, shadow astrology really highlights where we have our most opportunity and where we can allow our ego to really have some really bad, put us in a really bad circumstance in the long form. So I wanted to highlight, for this month we're going to be doing Shane Dawson, and so we're going to do a shadow astrology reading on his chart. We do not have his birth time, however we can still look at his chart as far as where the planets are as well. And trust me, looking at his chart, even not knowing the time, there's definitely a lot of different issues that I'm already seeing. So we're gonna get into it, and we're gonna talk about the relationship to the public. And one of the reasons why I wanted to do this shadow astrology series on the channel is because I want you guys to understand and be aware of how, like, celebrities, people we put this like halo or these like horns on, those being psychology, sociology terms, which basically says, people who we're fans of or we look up to, we put halos on them. They can do nothing wrong, and people that we see that do bad, we can only see them as bad people. We can only see them as people who are not worth your time. They're just trash. They're just not even worth it. So we kind of, as a society, do this thing. We collectively shame, we collectively do a lot of canceling, we do a lot of that stuff. And so I wanted to focus on how that shows up in somebody's chart and how they could kind of set themselves up for something like this and how they deal with the energy. And so I kind of wanted to make this video as like a little bit of a social experiment. So every month I'm gonna pick a different person. At some point I'll probably have you guys voting on it in the community tab, so we'll see how that works. But yeah, so let's break down Shane Dawson's chart a little bit. For those who don't know who Shane Dawson is, which can be like a little bit rare because he was really, really big on YouTube. He's one of the considered OGs creators on YouTube. He did a lot of blackface and a lot of really inappropriate child stuff. And for those who are curious about what he did to the capacity of what he did, he basically modernized blackface and under the guise of comedy for a really long time, for years. And yeah, if you guys want more information on what he actually did, why he got canceled, why he got the society you know, went ham on him. I can link down D'Angelo Wallace's video on that below so you guys can get the context. It's a really long video. It's like a feature film documentary, but it shines a light on pretty much what he did and how he got popular from it, but also why it's bad. So let's get into the chart. So I'm going to break down the planet positions, and then we're going to kind of talk about different issues that I personally see in the chart. Now, because though we don't have the exact like birth time, obviously the degrees are not going to be fully correct, especially when it comes to the moon, because on that day that he was born on it says July 19th, 1988, the moon actually was switching from Virgo to Libra, so he can either be a moon in Virgo or he can be a moon in Libra. Those two things we do not have confirmed. However, that to me doesn't really signify that much as far as the bigger parts that I'm looking at. So his sun is in Cancer, so he is a Cancer, which is why he does that thing where he says he's like really intuitive. Throughout a lot of his more recent videos, he would say that he's intuitive. I think at some point he got to the point, I believe, that he was trying to look a little bit more spiritually within himself, or try to understand himself a little bit more spiritually, because he would say up and down that he's just very intuitive and he connects to people's emotions and all this kind of jazz. And he does have his sun in Cancer, but I'm gonna tell y'all one thing that I always notice about men, specifically with a sun in Cancer. Okay, for me, it can be an issue because men have a really hard time connecting with Cancer's energy. Cancer is a feminine sign. It is very much, it tips into the divine feminine aspect versus the divine masculine aspect. And so usually when men, no matter, like, because I know Shane is gay, no matter what they are, if they have this kind of masculine energy about themselves, it tends to be misused 100% of the time, from what I've seen. That's just my personal, I'm not saying everybody or all Cancer men are like this, but Cancer men tend to have issues with emotions, tend to have issues with understanding their emotions or being sensitive with their emotions, because they're both men, and men are, in society, we put this kind of thing on them where they can't be emotional. We don't want them to be emotional. We want them to be manly man, like the thing that people say. And so for specific Cancer men, it's weird. It's weird because it's almost like they have to like be stern and, you know, be a certain way, but they feel so much. So there is like an emotional contradiction that happens with sun in Cancer men right off the bat. They kind of are brought up to this world with like a different undertones of who they're supposed to be versus how emotional they can be. So on an emotional aspect, there's levels to Shane where he has to be really strong or be seen as very strong, but in a reality, he might just be an emotional wreck, and you guys have the perception that he is, you know, oh, he has this attitude about it, and the way he's communicating or stating certain things, he's very dismissive, or he's not trying to seem weak, because the second if he shows emotions, it will be criticized, and it's a turn on itself. It doesn't help, and it doesn't work. We're gonna skip over the moon because, again, of this degree situation, and we're going to go into his Mercury, which is also in Cancer. One of the things that and this is something that I personally have been on YouTube, like as far as like use YouTube as a platform for a really long time, since its creation, to be honest. So I've seen some of Shane's older videos, and I never thought they were funny. They were always under this guise of comedy, but I was like, I don't understand why you're dressed as Nicki Minaj. Like, that's not funny. Like, you're just not a funny dude. This is my personal opinion. I never thought he was funny. Things that he say I don't find funny. I don't watch him enough or anything like that. I think I saw like 1 or 2 videos and I was like, okay, this dude is weird. That's literally what my thoughts were within those moments when I was younger. And so I never really liked his content. However, what I will tell you about his sun in Cancer, because Cancer rules like the family aspect, okay, it rules that mother like energy, the nurturing energy. If you look at his content and the things that one of the things that he got in trouble for was making content for kids that were very much, you know, sexualized, and it created a problem because what he was doing was like there was a lot of like trauma involved and into the children character that he was creating, and how he kind of played down and saw that as, I know there's like an interview of him saying that he basically with the way his kids kind of like, there's a lot of kids that follow him and he's just trying to help them get through like the pains and the traumas and stuff that they like endure and have gone through, and like see their own traumas and try to overcome their traumas. So in a way, he kind of has taken his Cancer energy, especially because his Mercury is in Cancer. So verbally, he thinks that he's nourishing something. This is another reason why he always states, oh, I'm so intuitive. Oh, I just like, I care about people. I want to take care of people. I want to, I'm very much about trying to fix people, or I'm attracted to or magnetized to people who are hurt or in pain, because he's verbally, on a verbal standpoint, his Mercury is communicated by Cancer. And I'm sure for anybody who would have had a conversation with him, he would have been someone who would have been listening, or would have been alert, or would have been actually trying to understand their point of view, all of these kind of stuff. So he did portray himself, I would say a little bit accurate in that regard, but I do feel like the way that he used his Cancer energy, because Cancer rules family, and so there is a huge connection to children when it comes to Cancer's energy. The way he connected, and he chose to connect to kids, and he felt like he was doing something good by kind of doing all these weird jokes for children that were very much sexualized and trying to help them get through their own traumas, is his way of bringing the nourishing aspect that Cancer naturally wants to do. Because again, Cancer men don't really know how to use the divine feminine energy properly. It's just, I'm telling you, like from the ones that I've read and the ones that I've met, I haven't seen a sun in Cancer man who has their emotional shit together. I'm just being honest. So there is this aspect of him where he thought he was nourishing his viewers. He thought he was nourishing and bringing something good, whether like his jokes were helping someone get through the day and stuff like that. Like he actually believed that stuff, and I think to an extent he probably still believes that, because his Mercury is in Cancer, and so he naturally has this way of wanting to nurture something or somebody, but then it doesn't actually, like everybody else is like, wait, the way you're trying to nurture like this is not right. This is an issue. There's like child issues here. There's like blackface. There's like there's so much stuff going on. It's just like, wait, what exactly are you trying to nurture? Do you not see how you're trying to take care or show or, you know, have a comedic relief, and how that actually is affecting who his viewers are? And so there is this kind of issue with how his Cancer energy comes out. And I can see that just from looking at his chart. The next thing is that his Venus is in Gemini, okay? Gemini. I will tell you right away that Venus in Gemini finds a lot of pleasure in saying a lot of stupid shit. Come fight me. Y'all know it's true. Venus in Gemini loves words, loves communication, loves to be politically correct, loves to be, you know, a little saucy, a little, you know, talking about things that you might not want to talk about, and just Venus in Gemini. Geminis cross every line. They don't care. It's not even about caring for them. It's just that they can do it. They can get away with it. A lot of people were asking before, and even D'Angelo Wallace was asking, like, how did he get away with all of this stuff? I don't get, like, a couple people called him out back in the day, and even up to recent, but he still got away with all this stuff. He still revamped himself. He still did all. Venus and Gemini. Geminis can pretty much get through any door, even if you're trying to block them from doing so. And if you want an example of that, look at the the current president of the United States, as per the time that I'm making this video. Okay, shade. But yeah, Geminis have a way of being able to overcome pretty much any situation. There is this luck that comes with being a Gemini, because they're the children are back in this conversation, because they're the children of the zodiac. They very much get away with anything. And the reason why this is because Geminis are seen as children. They're seen as very lighthearted, very like, you can't have a heavier hands with Gemini. You just want to, it's almost like a child in the playground. They're going around, they're running around all over the place. They're trying to play with everything. They're trying to, do all the things. It's kind of like that. Like, they're really, really just trying to do whatever they want. And it's not necessarily, nobody's kind of has a telescope on them and says, wait, what you're doing is actually bad. No, they're just like, it's playful. It's just, we're just talking. We're just like, we're just having fun. We're just having jokes. Or this is just how me and my friends talk. This is just how me and my friends connect. This is just how I, what I think is funny. This is just how I find, my comedy. This is just like the things that I find my comedic relief through. Like, it's just, they can get away with anything, like Geminis can. So this really goes hand in hand with looking at where, like, if you have Gemini in your chart yourself, that house or even that placement tends to be a very getting away with anything kind of area in life. And if you actually look at it, if you look at that placement, you should see and you think back, you're like, wait, I have gotten away or I have, overcome a lot, or there's times that I should have gotten in trouble for what I said there, but I did not. Geminis have like a way of like overcoming things really quickly, because they're the fastest moving. Like, they're just too fast. Like, Mercury's just too fast. It's like, this is why even like with like Trump, for example, there's like every single day there's a new like drama, or there's a new scandal or something. Just as like it started, another one just started, you just forgot about this one because you're too busy concentrating on this one. Like, they're just, it's just they keep bouncing around from place to place. And so with his Venus and Gemini, as far as like looking at it through its shadow astrology, like the goggles, and trying to see where there could be pitfalls from having a Venus and Gemini, is while Venus and Gemini can be very like fun, can be, again, because there's good things about having Venus and Gemini, and it's not a retrograde for him, so it's not necessarily that it can be bad. It's just that he enjoys and he finds pleasure in his words. He finds pleasure in communication. He finds pleasure in how he connects with people on a conversation, on the way you interact with words. It's all about communication. He finds pleasure in making content, creating narratives as well. And that's kind of where the pitfall is for him, because the narratives he have created, he will always be known as the modern, like somebody who modernized blackface in this generation, in the past generations as well. Like, he will always be known for that. And it's all because of how he wanted to communicate his content. So there's positive ways to use Venus and Gemini energy, and there's also like ways where it can have like issues, because if you over communicate or try to relate your own personal traumas and pains through your content, and just trying to make fun of the things that you've gone through, because I know he said he's been through a lot of traumas in his past and stuff like that. When you try to use your Venus and Gemini energy to release and show or kind of express those type of things in the things that you find pleasure doing, which is communication, you can end up landing yourself in very traumatic areas of how you're communicating, how you're kind of targeting certain subjects, certain topics in the content that he was creating. And so as far as like him coming back and doing stuff like that, I do feel like he's always going to want to communicate. As much as people are putting him in a you're canceled, like you're dead canceled, you should have lost your platform, like I don't know why you're still on YouTube, all of these kind of things, there's still an aspect of him that is always going to want to connect to people, even though people might not want to connect to him or hear him talk. Just from having Venus and Gemini and having this kind of blockage to connecting with others, I would say he's probably in a very depressed place right now, on an emotional and mental level, because he's lacking that connection with other people. And again, it's almost like having all the doors closed, when I just told you guys Venus and Gemini doesn't have any doors closed, that they find ways to open doors, they find ways to sneak through, and they're kids. They're seen as, you know, just let them play. Just let them play. And just let them play in the house, and they'll just open every single door in the house, even if it's a locked one. And so there is this kind of like, for him, a weird energy now, because it's like he can't communicate. There's a blockage there. And while he'll still have core fans, you know, every person who's like canceled always has like core fans anyway. But while he still has that, there's still a lot of issues as far as what he has communicated in the past and how that came back to haunt him in a big way. So we're gonna get into that, but I wanted you guys to understand the Venus part, because Venus rules that love, money, and pleasure, and he was getting his money and his pleasure and his love from communicating the things that he thought were funny, he thought was meaningful, he thought he wanted to highlight, and that he just wanted to share. And a lot of it was definitely done in a very lighthearted fashion that didn't make any of them have very deep and dark undertones as well. So let's continue on. His Mars is in Aries, and the Mars in Aries part is what explains that reaction video that he had done when he had like went on the live. That was such a stupid thing to do. He went on the live while he was reacting to the whole Tati Westbrook thing, and he basically was going off, and it's almost like the public got to see a whole different side of him within that moment, because he was just like breaking down in front of everybody. But all he knew how to do best was communicate and try to talk and defend himself to some capacity, and it was just not working. That's that Mars in Aries. Okay, the Mars in Aries wanted to curse somebody out, and he almost did in that whole thing. But the Mars in Aries can be very jumpy, can be very flighty, can lead to like anger issues. While Mars in Aries is in alignment where it's supposed to be, because Mars rules Aries, but at the same time, having Mars in Aries leads to a very, as far as your passion goes, because Mars rules how you fight, how you go to war, how you get mad, how you kind of share your passion and communicate and act on your passions. It can be very impatient, because Aries is just that, and it can be very warlike. So there is a definite calculated, you know, I'm gonna play my game, I'm gonna attack in this format because this is what I feel like is correct. Like there's just like this moment of I'm gonna react. I'm gonna let you know exactly how I'm feeling, and being very bold, even though, you know, there's this Cancer energy that might take a little bit of time to be reactive. The Mars in Aries, when he gets mad, he can be very aggressive, and he can be very like bold. And I will like remind y'all that Cancers are the ones who do the most like crimes of passion and stuff like that. Like they have to be at an emotional boiling point to react. They're that cardinal sign. Out of all the cardinal signs, Cancer can be very dangerous, because they have to be pushed to an emotional wall to be like blow up on somebody. Aside from that aspect, Cancers can be very, again, it's all about nourishment and being action minded in how you're nourishing the content you're creating, the things that you're sharing, and what you're giving to, you know, whoever you're nourishing at that point, whether it be kids, whether it be like your friends, whether it be your family, whoever it is. And so with the Mars in Aries, there's definitely a warlike mentality in his head, and just the reactiveness. It definitely comes out when he feels attacked, when he feels like, you know, he did something wrong. There's a part of him that gets reflective sometimes, yes, but when it's like, you know, like it really explains to me that whole entire IG live that he did, where he just went off on the TV, just screaming at the video from the TV. Like, it was just stupid. And that's that Aries, like, you want to fight? I'm going to yell at you right now. I'm going to tell you right now. Like, it's very aggressive, like, energy. The next one we're going to talk about is Jupiter and Taurus. Oof. And the thing about this specific aspect for me as far as Jupiter goes is that it does bring a focus to the finances and the values. I do think that he has a lot of awareness about his finances and money, and I think that's, as much as I do not watch Jeffree Star at all. I remember watching the video on the D'Angelo Wallace breakdown and stuff, and he was talking about how he broke down crying when Jeffree Star was telling him how much he could earn on the conspiracy palette or whatever. And so he felt like he's been on YouTube for like, what, 20 years? Was it 20 years? I don't remember. For like such a long time. And all of these new coming, you know, like James Charles, like new coming YouTube people like are making way and 10 times more money than he is, just because of, you know, sponsorships and deals that they have and stuff like that. And so he like broke down crying because he was not making even like that amount of that they were making. And so when it comes to finances, when it comes to his content has brought him a lot of financial stability, and he does have a lot of luck there, where having this Venus and Gemini and Jupiter and Taurus has brought some alleviation to his finances. But the thing about Taurus is that while Taurus definitely values money, it values things. It values different types of, like, even like the eating habits and like what you consume, what you value, what you think is valuable to you. That could be having a bunch of cars. That could be having a bunch of, it's definitely a materialistic energy and a materialistic, but connected to pleasure first and foremost. So a lot of the time when it comes to him and his energy towards money, it's all about enjoying it, or like in spending it on things, and, you know, having those kind of moments where you're actually enjoying what you have made, what you have brought in. So having Jupiter and Taurus has just made him definitely wealthy in this lifetime, and it's not something that he's lacking. And it's something that definitely came pretty easy for him growing up. And it's just about him valuing the financial aspect of it, understanding his own value, understanding how he can, you know, bring in and call in money. The only problem with that is that if he overspent or did some things that he shouldn't have done, he would have very much easily overspent it and has like a little bit of a lacking on it, depending on, again, how this is aspected. And I don't know how it's aspected because we don't have the right time. So it could be either or, as far as overspending and, you know, doing too much and then lacking on the finances, lacking on the value, or having issues trying to connect with money and how, you know, it should be in your life, especially during this time right now, because he's not collecting any revenue from his YouTube, because I believe YouTube completely demonetized his account, even though it's still there, but it's not collecting any, he's not collecting any coins from it. So there is this kind of understanding the lack of money, the lack of taking his platform for granted, and the value of it overall, and what it means for him to have that platform and expand, whether it be an expansion of him not getting an open door anywhere, or whether it's him having the flow of finances and money from everywhere. The next things that we're going to be talking about is his generational planets, and his generational planets is where a lot of the problems lie for me, especially because when I look at the generational planets really dictate and talk about how you personally are also affecting the generations, the masses. So while his personal planets affect the generations as well, obviously, because they're his personal planets and how he relates on a personal level to everything, the generational planets are also show how his planet, like his energy, is impacting the masses. And because he already has this energy of connecting with the, you know, collective and impacting the collective, communicating, getting away with certain things, and being able to not be held accountable, especially because Venus is definitely not in retrograde, not being held accountable for those things. You see the retrograde planets being completely a little bit backwards on that. So he has Saturn in Sagittarius in retrograde, Uranus in Sagittarius in retrograde, Neptune in Capricorn in retrograde, and Pluto in Scorpio in retrograde. Now again, we don't know which houses these fall on, but that does not mean that we can't talk about the energy anyway. Having Saturn and Uranus in retrograde, especially just Saturn, because Saturn is a planet of karma, because they're both, Saturn and Uranus are both in Sagittarius energy gives him a little bit of a boost in a positive way. I'm going to explain why. Because Sagittarius is the most lucky sign in astrology. And so when you're looking at Sagittarian energy and you're like, okay, let me try to figure out why this person has gotten away with so much over time. Okay, again, Saturn rules time. So if you wanted to understand, like, okay, why it took so long, it's been so long, he's been on YouTube for so long, oh my God, he got away with all of that. Yeah, because he has certain points in his chart that is very lucky. That includes Venus in Gemini, and that includes Saturn in Sag. Sagittarius can be very like all over the place, can be very global, can be very like dabs in different things. It wants to know different things, and this is why he had different types of platforms. I know he had a podcast at some point. He had different like series, and he reinvented himself, and he kind of got into documentaries, which is very Sagittarian energy. All of these kind of aspects, he kind of got lucky, where some people in the community, especially YouTube, have had a hard time reinventing themselves or staying within a specific bracket of what their content looks like, to the point that, yeah, they get a ton of subscribers and they, you know, reach millions or whatever, and then at some point their content becomes stagnant, and it's just like, oh, okay, well, what are you gonna do next? Like, what else do you have to show us? Like, yeah, you were at this peak at this point, these couple of years in your life, and you reached all the success, but now what else are you doing? It's almost like asking, like looking at an actor's kind of like different roles that they've played and seen like their range. When it comes to YouTube, I feel like people lack range when it comes to content, because sometimes people try to reinvent themselves, sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. With Shane it actually worked. If you looked at what he did, going from making all these blackface jokes and all of this like kids content and even the podcast and try to be funny and edgy, whatever the hell he says, into getting a little bit, trying to be more serious and being like YouTube's documentary person, because that's what like he was trying to brand himself as of recently. And so it was a complete like refresh of data, of information, of what he was trying to do. And because Saturn rules time, and he was trying to kind of work with generational energy, because that's really, if you look at his content as per recent, it was very generational like energy. He was doing a lot of focuses on people within a certain time. He was analyzing time. He was studying these people's like kind of life between a certain time, like, oh, their rise and their pitfalls and how things change, all this kind of stuff with their content. And he had some luck there because he was working through his Saturn and Sag energy. The problem with this is that it's a retrograde, okay? And so when it comes to retrograde planets and shadow astrology, this is one of the first things I look at when I'm doing a shadow astrology reading. I want to see if there's any retrograde planets, because retrogrades show so much. It shows a focus on the past. It shows a focus on past lives. It shows traumas where things could have an issue, how throughout like this person's life they're going to have to revisit and focus in on the past in order to bring healing, or be like progress through the energy and actually use the energy in a way that it's supposed to be used. So it can show a lot of different things depending on which planet is in retrograde, depending on if the generational planets are in retrograde, and depending on, you know, what is going on with this person in the current moment versus the past. Because the thing about the retrograde planets is that they're always at some point, there's like almost like a switch that gets turned on, and then all of a sudden the whole entire focuses on the past, and it looks at the collective work of that person. It looks at the collective impact of that person. It looks at the past as a whole. And so if you guys saw the switch, or like, you could again watch D'Angelo Wallace's video so you guys can understand more about this. But there was a switch and a flip that happened where he was in public favor and he was loved for his content and loved for the reinvention and all of that stuff, using that Saturn and Sag energy, that trying to get into the knowledgeable and doing more documentaries and doing like these in-depth kind of analysis kind of things on people, into everybody, the generation, looking at his content as a whole and analyzing his past, which is what that retrograde is triggering for him. I don't have his time of birth in order to do a specific transit analysis on when this happened. However, this definitely is 1000% affected by his retrogrades, and his retrogrades and how the generations are really kind of relating, 1000% have to deal with his kind of downfall that's happened, his cancellation, his shame, his, you know, you're done. Because we looked at the entirety, we looked back, which is again very Saturn and Sag energy, to look back at the history of the thing, to study someone and say, you know what, this person, this situation was wrong, the content he was making was really bad, oh my god, he did blackface for like years and years and years and years, and why does he still have a platform? Why is he still monetized? Why do people think that this was funny? Like, the way he affected the generation, he definitely had a lot of luck navigating a lot of, you know, the content. However, it caught up to him with the retrogrades, 1000%. If you look at the retrogrades, it caught up to him. Saturn literally did almost like a little, like, a U-turn and said, okay, you know, you reinvented yourself, you've been doing this, you've been doing that, but can we turn around and look back at what you actually did from the beginning, who you are? And because these are the generational planets, and if you're if you're one of these people who are a public figure, other people are watching you go through this. If you're a private person and you're, you know, private citizen, then the way it looks like to you would be more in your inner circle and your friends, and, you know, things kind of misaligning, and when it comes to your connections with other people. But when it comes to you being a public figure, other people get to analyze your own pitfalls. So it creates this kind of turbulence in your life, and Saturn comes through and says, okay, you're gonna get karma for this, that, that. You like, when it comes to karma, including, I told you guys that Gemini gets away with everything. Saturn is one of those planets that does not let Gemini get away with everything, and it does catch up to Gemini. It's almost like an old man running running like at a kid because he took his wallet or took his cane or something. Think of Saturn like this old man just running down the street because this kid just was joking, took his cane or something, started running like ha 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 ha. Okay, and then that kid gets hit by like a car in that corner where he kept running, he got hit by a car, he wasn't paying attention, and time just caught up to that kid. It was just like, well, that's what you get for doing that. Karma. That was a very like dramatic example, but that's the one we're going with. And so Saturn basically caught up to him in this moment where now people were looking at all of the content and then saying, hey, are you still in alignment or like mentally with your Venus? Like, do you still find pleasure in all of this content? Are you still consciously with your Mercury, like, do you think this was beneficial to kids? Like, that's one of the big questions, I feel like, especially when it comes to his Mercury in Cancer. Like, do you think that this was beneficial to kids? Do you think that, you know, you were actually helping anybody, or did you think that you were actually causing a lot more issues than you were? And so it brings a lot of karmic energy into the equation, and now it's just about sitting with time within this. He still is going to have that Sag energy, so there'll still be some luck and opportunities that eventually come to him, because people like that usually have these placements don't just fully go away. And I have to stress that, because he's also not the type of person that wants to stay away. If he wanted to stay away, he would have, and it would also, his chart would also dictate it. But usually people who are in the public eye have a lot of different energies within their chart that makes them be a little bit more outgoing and wanting to share with others. And that's that Sag energy, that's that Gemini energy. Even though Cancer can be a very secluded, like, you know, like water sign that, you know, likes to hide the emotions, and again, as a Cancer like man that we're talking about. So there's already like a hidden emotion problem going on. But at the same time, there is this like, I still want to share, I want to connect, I want to, like, you know, I'm a different person now, I think differently, I believe different things, all of these kind of things that like will be getting communicated. But right now it's like Saturn teaching a lesson, Saturn having that karma on him, and why it took so long for him to get the karma is written in his chart. And that's one of the things that I want people to understand when it comes to why wasn't, like, he was on for so long in that narrative. Even D'Angelo Wallace was talking about this in his video. He was just like, I don't know why it took so long for him to, you know, get demonetized or for people to call him out and all this kind of stuff. And I'm like, it's probably in his chart. And then I looked at his chart and I was like, whoop, there it is. And this is like one of those placements that is like, it's like that retrograde, especially with Saturn. Saturn is a very slow moving planet, so it takes time for bad karma to accumulate, like different actions that you have done against yourself to accumulate for then Saturn to be like, okay, let's just reflect. Like, it takes a while to do that U-turn for Saturn. And so that's why you have this little pitfall there. Now with Uranus and Sag in retrograde, there is this Uranus and Sag, I don't particularly see as a bad thing, especially because Uranus is a very higher thought planet. It's a very higher thinking planet. It's all about self-growth, upgrading, and self-evolution. And in this type of connection, Saturn and Uranus are definitely working together to say, okay, you need to upgrade yourself from the past, but you have to also understand that this is one of the reasons why he was able to reinvent himself so many times. And while he'll probably reinvent himself again when he comes back to the public, because I don't see him as fully going away. I don't think that's gonna happen. But that's Uranus and Sag energy. Again, that brings luck into the upgrade. Even though the upgrade in Uranus might have been a really hard crash, and I'm sure that it was very emotional and, you know, hard to navigate through, and like having to reflect with yourself and the history of you, because Sag energy is all about knowledge and understanding and seeing the perspectives and really diving into the history of things, the culture of things, the problems of things, and understanding other people's opinions and viewpoints. So Uranus gives, with Sag here, gives it a little bit of a boost, because then you're actually using Uranus's energy, which is very much about higher consciousness and you having that connection to your higher consciousness and knowledge. But because it's in retrograde, it's still connecting to Saturn in a way that is, things definitely crashed down in front of his eyes and burned down so fast. It was just like, whoop, there it is. And because Uranus, it just, the energy of Uranus, it happens on it's an unexpected moment. It's an unexpected energy. It can happen on an unexpected time. It's just like, poof, everything just blew up in front of my face kind of energy. And so it creates a lot of chaos on an internal way, where Uranus is trying to upgrade his thinking and say, hey, please reflect on everything that you did was wrong. Please reflect on how you affected other people, how you affected kids, what the criticism is, what the generation is saying to you. Because if you're trying to come back to the people to some capacity, you're going to have to be able to understand the knowledge that they have accumulated against you, that you have put out in the first place. I hope that making sense. And so there is this kind of like upgrade happening through knowledge. However, he's going to have to reflect on it for a really long time, because it's in retrograde, which means that it's going to take him a long time to actually come to terms with the shit that he's done. And to also see himself in the light that others see him, because nobody wants it. Ego-wise, the ego will tell you nobody wants to see themselves as a bad person. Nobody wants to see themselves as wrong. Nobody wants to see the ego is what the ego is. It just doesn't, it's not something that is super self-destructive, naturally speaking. And so Uranus is going to have this connection with Saturn, which is where it's going to take time to have this upgrade, and it's going to take a lot of reflection, and that's why this retrograde is there, to really highlight this. However, what I will say is that he doesn't heal this properly, especially because his Pluto is also in Scorpio. He's going to have to heal this lifetime in a different lifetime, because it might not be fully fixable. He might not fully overcome the traumatic events of everything. He might have issues healing his own traumas within his own life as well. So it depends how much work he wants to do or put in this lifetime to actually see some of those changes done in the first place. Then we have Neptune in Capricorn in retrograde. Neptune in Capricorn is all about, because Neptune has a highlight on spirituality and illusions. Okay, illusions, something looking like something else. And Capricorn energy is it has a huge focus on career. It has a huge focus on tradition, the things that were normalized. And this is why a lot of people will say, oh, that was funny back then, that was funny back then, we had a different humor back then, this was okay. But when you actually look at it, you're like, wait, is this okay? Was this okay? Or were you just trying to sell us that it was okay? This is where that Neptune in Capricorn energy can be a whole hot mess, because Neptune in Capricorn tends to have this energy of making tradition seem okay, making tradition, making the belief that, oh, but this is just how it was done, this is just what the jokes were back then, making and believing that those things were okay. And some people will defend him. This aspect gives, especially people who have this aspect too, will defend him based on that belief that it was just a different time and stuff like that. And he himself carries that energy where it's just like, you know, I was making content, it was a different time, it was a different me, and I thought it was funny and people thought it was funny and I had a lot of followers, so obviously it wasn't for nothing. Like that kind of mindset, that's still something that he's gonna carry to some extent. And because Neptune and Capricorn energy is very grounded, it can be very stubborn as well. However, it does highlight a couple of different things, especially about his own spiritual health and spiritual growth, because he does, again, you did see the switch of his content going from, you know, I'm just making fun of Black people to I am so intuitive and I care so much about people. And obviously because he's white, he already has this like privilege, so the fact that he, like, you know, blew up on YouTube the way he did, it was a lot of luck. He definitely had a lot of luck. It wasn't that his content was great, he just had a lot of luck, and he had a lot of people who were vulnerable to what he was showing and giving to the world. And so it created a lot of different things as far as what his content is actually grounded in, what his career looks like, what is his legacy, and now kind of moving away, like using Neptune's energy to be a little bit more spiritual, being more in touch with his emotions, communicating how nourishing and how a good friend he is, or how he cares for others and he just wants to see them do well or understand their pain, or have this like documentary-esque like focus on their life and stuff like that. Like it's all about kind of reflecting within the moments and the circumstances, and looking at this is one of those aspects as well that it really explains how he kind of wanted to look at others' careers as well, because Capricorn is all about, like, it has a business mindset, and especially for people who were very established, and how he did those videos, and people who already had channels, whether it's Jeffree Star or Graveyard Girl and stuff like that. Like, those people were already established. They already have millions of followers, but they were having pitfalls in their career when it came to how they were relating to the public, and their content was very much stagnant. And so he kind of came in with this kind of retrograde Neptune and this illusionary energy, like, let's revisit this person this week, let's revisit that person, let's look at their career, what they did, where the pitfalls are. And he created content of that, and so Neptune kind of gave him a little bit of boost with this. However, the pitfalls of having this placement is that it works towards him as well. And so a lot of the lies, the jokes, the content, any type of creation of anything, any type of creativity, any type of art form is ruled by Neptune, is ruled by that Piscean energy. And so when you look, as much as he did some work to help people's career, you can also see how that kind of came back to haunt him, because this isn't a retrograde. So there is this reflection back into his work, into his connection to his work, into how he feels about his work today, how he agrees with it, how he was trying to portray different viewpoints, different jokes as funny, different ways that he was communicating to children that were very sexually inappropriate as funny. All of these kind of things that came out of that subconscious area of that Neptune in Capricorn in retrograde energy. While it can be used as a positive thing, it can also be a little bit of a pitfall if used incorrectly. If you're working with Neptunian energy to create but forget your own creations in the process, and so you get caught up with what you're creating for other people, or what you're creating with, you know, what you're doing now, that you forget about all the past shit you did and how that has issues. And the other thing that we're going to talk about is his Pluto in Scorpio, which is also in retrograde. Mind you, if this is correct, his North Node is in Pisces and it is also in retrograde. It's talking about that Piscean energy in creation, which is in retrograde, which means that he definitely had issues with creation and bringing content and bringing content to the world, however that looked like. And that's actually one of his life lessons for this lifetime, is about his creation. It's funny that it's in retrograde, because it's almost like at all points in his life, he will always reflect back on what he has created, and his legacy will be that. And it's interesting because it's almost like he was definitely born to create and bring stuff to the world, but he definitely will have trauma from this lifetime from all of the things that he created, and you can see that in the chart. Anyway, so Pluto in Scorpio in retrograde. This is where I'm talking about this being either a past life issue or him actually having to heal this in a separate past life, because this is going to be a haunting of a thing. He's never going to be able to escape this. There's no, you know, oh, you can change the way people will see you. There will be a huge majority of people who will not like his content, who will see him in a negative light. His legacy is very much tainted. And that's also that Neptune in Capricorn in retrograde energy, that looking back at someone's career, looking back at, you know, like Epstein, for example, all these kind of things where you look back at everything that they did before, you're like, oh my God, their career is tainted. This person is tainted. I cannot look at them the same. I cannot look at their work the same. This is that energy right there. And so having Pluto in Scorpio gives it a depth, gives it a struggling in transformation as well, struggling in evolution, and how he evolves from this, how he transforms from this, how he becomes better from this. It takes him more time to heal, and to some extent he hasn't healed some things from his past anyway, so everything is, it can be a little bit more pent up when you have Pluto direct or just not in retrograde. It's better because that way at least you are being supported and constantly in this state of evolution. But when Pluto is in retrograde, especially in Scorpio, it just creates a little bit of tension, and everything just kind of piles up in a way. And so it creates a lot of emotional issues, traumatic issues, sexual issues. This would be within Pluto's energy in Scorpio, which rules sex, and ruling that sacral space, ruling different traumas within that as well, ruling your relationship with death, and whether that be death of, you know, habits, death of people, death of, you know, different situations that happened in his life. It's just, it creates a lot of different ways that things are just like really pent up, especially when it's in retrograde. So there's a lot of reflection that needs to get done. I 100% think that he probably needs to do some past life work as well, because he was born under this retrograde, which means that before he did all this shit, he already had this kind of stacked up against him. So it kind of creates a foundation of really, it's almost like setting yourself up to have a pretty strong weakness when it comes to releasing negativity, releasing trauma, releasing and letting go, reflecting on the past a lot, like really never letting go of that thing that happened. And you guys know I'm gonna say this because I say this every time I talk about cancers, because cancers do this. I don't care. Cancers do this all the time. Cancers do this thing that I like to call micro traumas, where they literally hold on to things that that it could be like the stupidest tiny thing, like their brother back when they were 5 years old took their candy and they're still mad that they took their candy. Like, it'll be stupid petty, and that'll be a trauma. They'll hold on to that until the end of time. Like, it'll take forever for them to let go. The fact that he is a Cancer and he has this Plutonian aspect is not good, personally, because it just makes it a little bit, it activates the fixed sign quality of Scorpio and makes it a little bit more of a kind of hard-headedness into allowing transformations to happen, evolving, and seeing himself as more progressive, leaving pain behind, leaving the past behind, really allowing the character of who he thinks he is, or the things that he experienced in the past, to not be him in the present. All of these kind of things kind of stays in the forefront. There's always like, he's always going to be one of these people that mentions like, oh, I've been through that, and like highlights trauma that happened and just continues to bring it up because it still holds a presence in his life, versus saying, you know, that was me like 20 years ago, but that's not, you know, this happened to me when I was young, but that's not who I am today. That's literally has nothing to do with me today. I'm like in another path. I'm doing this. That's not really like who he is and who he will be, because he's always going to have to reflect back on his past, reflect back on his transformations from this specific placement. So it's a little tough because he has, again, all of his retrograde planets, I mean, all of his generational planets are in retrograde, so he's always going to be like tainted when it comes to his generation and the generational planets that he's kind of dealing with. There's always a taint there. He's not really going to be able to overcome it in the way that he could be, but that he would want to, and be in like a public favor, but he still has a lot of luck and opportunity. So I can still see him coming back into the public at some point, because the personal planets, as much as the generational planets will wreck your life, the personal planets are still how you enjoy life itself. And his Venus is in Gemini. He still wants to talk and communicate and commune and with the public, with everyone, and have, you know, the things that he's built matter and mean something productively. So there's definitely a lot. I feel like he's definitely a complicated individual. But I do feel like a lot of it is just a misuse of his own energy, and a misuse of his own power, and a misuse of his own gifts, and the positive things about his chart versus the negative things and the opportunity things areas of his chart. So it's kind of just a little bit sad how it kind of turned out, but I'm not surprised either, just looking at his chart, how everything ended up manifesting in his chart either, because it was, a lot of it was just privilege and him making really stupid choices at the same time. So anyway, that was my shadow astrology breakdown of Shane Dawson. I will, like, let me know in the comments if you guys want to pick, like, if you guys want to do a poll for the next person in February that we talk about. I hope that this was insightful. I hope that you guys also understand a little bit more on how to read astrology in different ways, because it's not all sunshine and rainbows and everything's okay. There's a lot of different ways to understand astrology, and how you can have different pitfalls in your chart, and how you use that energy and manifest good or bad. And, you know, the way you block yourself, the way you let the universe kind of wreck you because you are misusing your own energy, and the way you can have really a lot of luck and opportunity and get away with a lot of shit, and it could catch up to you later. So I hope that this was educational. That was really the point of this video. And definitely go check out the podcast on cancel culture and shame, because I do feel like, personally, like for Shane, as far as the topic of him being deplatformed, especially from YouTube, I do agree with it to an extent. I don't feel like he should continue to have a platform on YouTube. However, I do feel like he does need to do another reinventing of himself into some capacity. If he's trying to come back to the public in some capacity, he's going to have to do it in a different way. And we'll see how that happens, but I don't necessarily think that he should be rewarded by the platform, by YouTube specifically, in this kind of way. And again, I talked about in the podcast how cancel culture and shame affects you in a monetary kind of way. And the problem with that I have specifically with his content is that he did it for so long. As a Capricorn, personally, I am an analyzer of time. Like I analyze time. That's like the big focus for me is time. He did this shit for years. Like it's not, oh, you know, he said one comment, oh, he, you know, for a couple months he treated someone like shit. No, it wasn't that. Like he got away with time. Like it's like, it's kind of like watching a child bully somebody in school and then they end up getting their comeuppance, and you're gonna ask me if they don't deserve their comeuppance. They deserve their comeuppance. That I can see how karma needs to happen in that aspect. However, there's parts of cancel culture, and as we will talk about, dive into the series a little bit with Shadow Astrology, where I will tell you guys when I don't agree that somebody should be canceled or not, or where it just doesn't make any sense, or where it was just like a one type of moment that happened and it's just like not that serious. Like I'm just not gonna hold that against them. But this specific person did this shit for a really long time, and that lies the problem. The amount of time that is invested in doing wrong should equal the amount of time you have to pay for it. So there's that. Like for example, like even R. Kelly, pretty sure he's going to jail, and I'm still mad he was born on my birthday. Listen, I'm still mad, because I personally feel like, and as a Capricorn, all the stuff he did warrants him doing the time for it. And so yeah, definitely check out the podcast if you want my thoughts on cancel culture and shame, because I feel like, especially being a Gemini moon, I can understand both sides of why people think it needs to happen versus why it's also very stupid and doesn't benefit anybody's growth to any capacity. So yeah, it's always going to be complex to me, but I hope that this series kind of helps you guys understand astrology in a different light. And if you do want an astrology reading with me, or even a shadow astrology reading with me, the link will be down below. Readings are going to be open next week, because this week is my birthday, so I'm taking it off. But next week readings are open again, so you can check out my calendar if you would like to book a reading. And yeah, I will definitely see you loves in the next one. Have a very beautiful night. Don't forget to subscribe. Don't forget to check out the Patreon so you get notified, and stay in the loop. And yeah, I will see you in the next video.